Hi, everyone. Welcome to Bay Coding Club webinar with Rachel Lu here. Rachel is the computer science major student at MIT, and she is going to give us the webinar is for some of computing related with the research. So before she gets started the speak, let me shortly introduce what is the Bay Coding Club. Who we are, what we do. Okay. Bay Coding Club is a leading K-12 STEM education academy located at Silicon Valley. We bring cutting edge of computer science education to students from 5 to 15. We offer different kinds of computer science, art, creative courses online, either offline at the Cupertino on-set. And we have a lot of courses such as Scratch, Roblox, Robotics, Java, Python, Musical, AP Computer Science, ACSL, and some of other clubs. Clubs we open very randomly, but we open every week on weekends. And we both open online and offline, and we provide places to ask the kids, play around, do some research, do some project, and practice their learned. And also our team members are really dynamic. And our team members include senior technology engineers around the Silicon Valley. And at the same time, we have a lot of consultants from higher level of education universities, such as Stanford, MIT, and SUNY Albany, and other universities all around United States. Right now, we don't have Chinese version, of course. We have the only classes taught by English, but in the future, maybe we'll open some of a Chinese class. So this is the roadmap that Bay Coding Club developed. We established as a nonprofit at 2015 at Albany, upstate New York. And right now we are moving to California, and we move all our offline courses online during the pandemic. Okay, this is a little bit about me. I'm Ruby San, founder of Bay Coding Club. I'm a mom, and I'm the computer science teacher at the community. Okay, this is a kind of introduction of our Bay Coding Club courses. I think you can get a lot of information from our website. Our website is baycodingclub.com. And this is, I think, a snapshot from our website, the classes we provided. You can just look up at our website about all the courses. You can click in to see what the contents will provide, okay? All right, we provide group classes, means there will be 8 students in one class, and we provide semi-private classes. That means 1 teacher, 2 or 4 students in one class. And we provide one-on-one, that means private class. Okay, we set up the class. Some of the students always ask me, how you guys teach computer science to kids? Yeah, well, we just set up a lot of goals. We talk with the kids who want to register our Bay Coding Club. We give them the evaluation. We know their interest, and we design the pathway for them from kindergarten to maybe high school. So if you're interested in registering our courses, especially in computer science or robotics, so just let us know you, and then we can design your unique pathways. This one is we designed for a guy who wants to participate AC computer science during the high school. And this, all the pathways that we did that design for different kids has different interests, such as if you wanted to do more about game design, we added a lot of ingredients or courses for you for game design. And we also have some competition-based courses such as Yosako short stand by United States of American Computer Science Olympiad. And this is ACSL, short for American Computer Science League. This is also a competition. We opened from elementary to high school. So if you want to know more information, just click our website. And this is the USICO team. Last year, we get a lot of rewards, such as the gold medal and the silver medal for Bay Coding Club team. And we also opened a lot of club, only 10 to 18 bucks per week. So join us. You have a lot of peers inside of the club. You can meet once a week and do a lot of practicing. All right, this is a little bit information for contact with our colleagues. You can call, you can email. This is pretty much all that I want to introduce by far. I want to stop sharing. And I want to introduce a little bit about Rachel Luo. Rachel is very excellent teacher at Bay Coding Club. And at the same time, she is a marketing specialist and she's taking charge of the social media of Bay Coding Club. And I will just give the time to Rachel, let her introduce herself. Hey, Rachel.
So hi, everyone. And like what Ruby said, my name is Rachel. And let me just share my screen so you can see the slides I made for this webinar. So today we're going to be talking about computer science and how to do research, like scientific research using computer science. So let's begin. So first, let me just reiterate, like, who am I? So my name is Rachel. I'm gonna be an incoming freshman at MIT, probably next week. So it's gonna be very soon. And I also did research during my high school and middle school years. So I have some experience with conducting research that involves computer science, which can be used to analyze data and also gather results while you do scientific research. So today I'm just gonna talk briefly about what is scientific research and how you can do a research project before you even go into college and become a scientist, if that's one of your future goals. And then I'll talk about how we can use computer science in research. And then finally, I'll conclude with where we can all start, even as young as in middle school or high school, so then we can gain a step up to scientific research before going to college or before becoming a scientist. So let's start off with what is research. So there's two main distinctions between those research projects required in school versus passion scientific research, where you just research something you're interested in just for the sake of researching and having fun and discovering something new about a topic you're interested in. So school required research projects tend to involve something that teachers assign you. So if some of you guys are in middle school, or even maybe in elementary school, sometimes teacher assigns something called labs, where they give you a step of a procedure or a step of what you're supposed to do. And then you conduct that experiment and just gather data that were already defined by your teacher. So it's what you're supposed to, what data you're supposed to get. And if you don't get those data, then your teachers might just mark it wrong, or you did something wrong in your experiment. But then for passion scientific research, sometimes you conduct research on a topic that hasn't been explored by other people. So when you get your data, you don't know if it's right or it's wrong. There's no predefined definition or idea of what you're supposed to get, but you just do this research project to learn more about a topic. And maybe if you discover something very cool, then you might tell your friends or other scientists what you found in your own research project. So school-defined research projects have they have expectations, the right and wrong answers, but passion scientific research tend to not have right and wrong answers. And you just do those projects to see what you might get. So, and between those two types of research is also more defined research types. So there's something called lab research, where that's what you probably think about when you think about like conducting research, like all those like TV shows where you see a bunch of scientists walking around a lab, mixing stuff. That's what you think about when you think about lab research. So it's kind of similar to labs you might have done in school, where you gather data and do an experiment, and then you analyze that data and try to make a graph and stuff like that. And another type of research is called simulated or data research, where you don't actually work in the lab, but you mainly work on your computer. So sometimes you could just work on it at home, where you get like a bunch of pre-gathered data. So that you might have like pages and pages of table of like different data points. And then you can use computer science or something else on your computer to analyze all of those like multiple lines of data to search for like patterns or new findings you could get from those data tables. Does anyone have any questions about like lab research and data research? If not, we can move on. So if you guys have any questions anytime during the webinar, you can always type in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself and ask, and I'll answer those questions. So this is my experience with my research project. So in high school, I did a research project on astrophysics, which basically means it's a fancy way to say astronomy that focuses on analyzing stars in the universe. So it's pretty cool. If you ever watch like Star Wars, it's around like analyzing planets and stars. So my research project focused on analyzing the ages and masses of stars. And I used Python to model the data that's already pre-gathered with stars, because stars, like astrophysics, is an example of data science, like and not lab research, but because I can't really like go into a lab and actually take some samples from stars and analyze it that way. So I just focus on using data that's already available on Google or through like my mentor, which I'll talk about what mentor is. And I use it to analyze like how to find the ages and masses of stars and how that correlated to the growth of stars. And I used astrophysics to model data using Python. And this project was an example of a project I did just for like competitions, for like in these like research competitions in high school. But here's another example of a research project I did, which was mainly a passion project. So like something I was just interested in and just wanted to do it. So in this case, my second research project was on disease propagation. So it might sound very complicated, but it's just about how, like I studied how people can spread diseases. Like I did it 2 years ago, which is kind of funny because what's the whole happening on right now with COVID. So back in when I was like a sophomore, I did a project on just how to spread diseases. So in this case, I use a simulation because you can't really go outside and give diseases to people and then analyze how it spreads because that's not really humane. So I did a simulation, and once again, I used Python. So as you can see, a common theme in all my research projects is using Python computer science to analyze data. So this main research project focused on how governments should respond to like a disease or a pandemic that's happening. And I use something called reinforcement learning, which is an example of AI, because I gave my like disease some human characteristics like what AI, so it could spread throughout the community. So I use reinforcement learning. And then once again, this is an example of a passion project. I didn't submit it into like any competitions or anything. I just did it because I was interested in it, and I told my friends about it. So does anyone have any questions about what is research or any of my projects? I'll elaborate more about it like in the next few slides.
So can you introduce a little bit your programs that you attend a little bit, or your?
Yeah. So the programs, so wait, you mean like the programs as in computer science programs or research programs?
Research programs that you mentioned.
Okay, so I was gonna talk about it in the next few slides, but just briefly talk about it. So like my first research project was done for competitions, and I did that through my school's like research program. So my school had a research program in high school, and I joined it and I did a project about it. And my second project was mainly a passion project. So I did it because I wanted to learn more about how diseases spread in communities. And I did it as part of like an MIT program called VivaWorks. So if you guys are gonna be in high school soon, or like in the future, once you reach your junior year, you can always sign up for that program. Like I learned a lot about artificial intelligence and all of that through that research program. Okay, so if no more questions, let's move on to like procedure, like how to actually do a research program. Because if I keep talking about like all those research projects I did and not talk about like how I did them, you might not get like a lot from it. So I'm pretty sure if you guys are in middle school, you maybe even in elementary school, I'm not sure how early they teach this, but there's something called a scientific method, which most of you, if you're in middle school, should have learned this in science. So like the scientific method, find a question you're interested in, or like a topic, like that's usually the first step. Then the second step, you do an experiment on it. You gather all the resources that you need for that experiment, and then you actually do the experiment. Like whether or not it's a lab experiment where you have to go in person and actually like mix like chemicals together and then measure stuff with a ruler or any of that. Or it can be a computer experiment where like you simulate stuff and you only do that on a computer. And then after that, finally, once you finish your experiment and gather all of the data, you analyze your results and then present your findings. Because if you do a research project and just keep it to yourself, it'll be better if you just say, tell your friends or tell your family, oh, I did this cool research project and I got this. Even if your research project seems very simple and just like one that you just did in school, you could always just tell, like you should be proud of that research project and tell like your friends and your family and your teachers what you found out and what you learned from that research project. So that was just a shortened version of the scientific method. So the whole scientific method has multiple steps. As you can see right here, this whole circle. So you pose a question and then you tend to research that topic area. Because sometimes some questions that you want to do a research project on might have already been answered by other people. So you can see what other people did, and maybe you can do something else that's not similar to what other people did. So you can see if you get new information or new data. And then sometimes you have to make a hypothesis. So what do you think will happen? And then you test that hypothesis with an experiment. So once again, it can either be a lab experiment, which you do like in person by mixing stuff, or it can be a computer experiment that involves computer science. And then finally, you get some data, you analyze that data, make some conclusions, and then you report that conclusion to other people. So then other people can either build upon your research project and think of new questions or new ideas that can make their own research project on, or like you yourself can look at, oh, this is what I did. Maybe I can do something else to learn more about this topic. Does anyone have any questions about the scientific method? If not, we can move on. If anything is confusing, just stop me and I'll explain it. Okay? So the scientific method, the order of which you do each step is not set in stone. So sometimes you can do an experiment, but then you look at the results and be like, this is weird. I don't think I did it correctly. And then you can always skip doing the conclusions and then go back to redoing your experiment. So the order that you can see right here, even although it looks like a continuous circle, don't think of it as like, oh, I do this first, and then I do this, and then I do this. Based on what your research project is, and based on what you're getting, what data you're getting, sometimes you have to go back to researching more about a topic area. Sometimes you even have to question, like, oh, is this question that I'm gonna do a research project on actually important? Or like, is this question already have been answered by other people? Like, do I want to do this research project? So the order is always different. Don't just follow, don't think of it as a set procedure or a set of steps that you have to do in order to do your research project. And then how you do each step of the scientific method also differs. Like back then, when you think of research, people might be like, oh, go to a library, grab some books and read about your topic. But now as like technology progresses, you might think about, oh, Googling like your research topic, or even asking people for help with your research topic. So each step differs. Like doing an experiment can also change. For some people, it might be like if they're doing a project on, I don't know, like rockets, they might go like build a rocket, step outside and launch the rocket. But then if you're doing a project on, say, like that involves computer science and how you can use artificial intelligence to like control robot, you're not gonna like go outside and launch rockets. You're gonna do something else. You're gonna write programs for your robot and then learn more about artificial intelligence. So like each step of your research project, like the order of the steps change and also how you do each step change. So don't think about like, oh, if someone else did the research project that way, you don't have to copy them. You know, that is not, like, there isn't just one correct way. So always adapt the scientific method to your research project. Think of it as a baseline and not like a set of rules you have to follow. Okay, so finally, let's talk about computer science and how you can incorporate that in your research and why it might be useful to have computer science in your research project. So computer science can make your research way easier. So say you have a lot of data, say you have like tens of hundreds of pages of data. If you were to do it yourself, that's gonna take hours, maybe even days, months of your time. So maybe you can just write a simple computer science program, like in Python, that just looks at the data and then checks what data you want to get from them. So computer science can make things way easier and allow you to analyze a lot of your data like very quickly. And it can also make what seemed impossible possible. Like for example, my project on disease propagation, like how disease spread. If I didn't have computer science, I probably won't be able to do that project because I can't just go infect people with diseases and then just stand back and be like, okay, that person had this reaction and this person had that reaction. Like some projects are not humane, like those like projects involving animals, like altering genetics. Like sometimes you just have to simulate that experiment on your computer because you can't go out and do that. And also maybe you don't have the resources to actually do lab research. And that's why you can do only data research because like some high school, like if you're a student with not a lot of resources, you can't actually like get like live animals or genes, like DNA from other animals to actually do a research project with. So you can do something like a computer simulated research project where you can mess with DNA on a program, which is more possible than actually getting a sample of that DNA to do in the lab. So once again, there's many different uses for computer science. You can use it in analyzing data or like even for your final presentation. So in analyzing data, you can use computer science to gather data by going, say, like you're simulating something to happen in a program, and based on that simulation, you could get results from it. So you can use computer science to actually get those results. And you can use it to create graphs or find patterns by looking at a lot of data points, like a bunch of data tables. And you can also use it in something called determining significance. Most research projects have this like one step that says whether or not the data that you found is significant, which basically means like if those data is actually right, like not right, but like actually makes sense. Sometimes you know how you get some data due to chance, like just because you got lucky and got that data, or is it because that data actually is real and it's not just due to chance? You can also use computer science with artificial intelligence. And say you did all of your projects and you did not use computer simulated, like another computer simulated research, but you did lab research. But you can also use computer science to present your research to other people. So in this case, you can use it to create a website, maybe to detail your finding, or you can use it to make your presentation look nicer by making graphs and by making, like, presenting your data in a nicer way. Does anyone have any questions right now? Okay, so someone asked, may I know when you decided to do this major, or around when? So did you have any coding experience before your decision? So in college, I decided to major, I want to major in computer science. And so for my research project, right, I first started thinking about research before I really had any coding experience. So back in freshman year, I was thinking about doing a research project analyzing the stars and planets. So I didn't really have any coding experience back then, but then around freshman years when I started learning about like Python, Java, and then all computer science. And once I started learning that, I realized I was interested in computer science. So as I progressed it, through like learning computer science and joining clubs and doing research using computer science, I realized I was interested in this major and I want to major in that in college. So for like research projects, you don't really need any prior coding experience before you actually decide to do a research project with computer science. You can always learn as you go. And once again, like I said before, there isn't like a set steps to how you should do your research project. So if you decide to do a research project, but you didn't think that you need computer science, but then as you go and progress along with those research projects, you realize, oh shoot, I can't do this project without having computer science in it. You can always step back and pause your experiment and then learn more about computer science so you can incorporate that in your research project. Did that answer your question? Or did you mean something else? And if you're just talking about like doing computer science in college, I know a lot of people who want to learn computer, like major in computer science without actually having any coding experience before college. So it's never too late to think about pursuing a computer science like career or a computer science major in college, even if you don't have any coding experience. Like a lot of people I know didn't really learn, like actually know any coding, but they want to do computer science. So like, don't think, oh, it's so late, I'm in high school already, or so I can't actually do computer science in college. But don't think that. It's never too late. And if you're interested in something, you can always take the first steps, like taking some computer science courses, which we offer in Bay Coding Club, or like even just doing some research online. You can always start learning before you get to college, or even wait until you get to college and take classes there. Okay, so let's move on. Computer science. So here are two graphs I did in my research project using Python. So I'm pretty sure when you look at like research projects, you tend to see there are a lot of graphs. So graphs are very important in research because some people might not want to read your whole like research report or research paper about what you did. They might just open up a graph and see, oh, this is what happened. So graphs allow you to display your data to people without having them like read through paragraphs and paragraphs about like in your research report. So here's two graphs I did using Python. So the graphs I did using Python is pretty simple. We teach how to do data science in our Python level 2 course at Bay Coding Club. And people tend to pick it up very quickly because a lot of the code written to make those graphs have already been written by other people. So you don't have to start all over and actually create that graph using like hard coding. So I'm going to talk about it later, but there's a lot of pre-written something called modules, which are just like chunks of code written by other people, which you can use in your project or in your program, which makes a lot of things easier. So if you look at these two graphs, one graph right here is analyzing the ages of stars. I found using something called an HR diagram, which I did in my research project. And the other graph is shown by analyzing the masses of stars. And looking at the graph right away, you can tell that masses tend to have like a linear relationship. As you can see, like all the data points tend to line on one line, while if you look at ages, you can see like all the data points are everywhere. And that was like one of the main points I had in my research project, saying how the ages of stars between AND 13 and AG 14 were very different. And everyone could just like see it in this graph, because you can see like all of the ages up here, but they're down here for AND. So graphs are important because it's easier to understand than reading a research paper with a bunch of big, complicated vocabulary words that people might not understand. If you just look at a picture, it might be easier. And you can always use computer science to generate those graphs instead of having to draw them by hand. Like say if you have like a graph with a lot of data points, you don't want to like grab a piece of loose leaf, draw the graph, and then plot them yourself, because sometimes it's not very accurate, or if you make one silly mistake, and then you have to start over. So computer science can make graphing way easier than actually doing it by hand. So here is an example of a graph I generated using computer science. Like imagine having to do all of these lines and symbols by hand and actually like graphing some equations. So if you can see, like if I were to do it by hand, it might take an hour because my hands are very shaky and I might make mistakes. But when I did it using Python, this took like 5 minutes, because a lot of the graphs I generated in Python uses modules, which I talked about before, called NumPy and Matplotlib, which if you like ever learn Python in the future, those are like some major modules that people use to generate graphs or like even do data science. So this graph is generated using those modules, and I just imported a bunch of data into my Python program and just spit out this graph so for me to use, so I won't have to hand draw it. So if we look at this graph, you can see all these colors and those numbers I put. So computer science, so these modules allow you to customize your graphs so then it's easier for you to read and it's easier to generate. And bam, this is a zoomed in picture. So if I were to do it by hand, once again, I can't zoom in on my graph because we don't have like holograms, like the paper can allow you to zoom in. So you can see right here in Python, it like what's special about computer science, it allows you to zoom into your graphs, so to make it easier for me and for like other people. And these are the pre-written modules that other people did. So like modules of NumPy and Matplotlib, that which can make gathering and analyzing data way easier. And these modules exist, so you can, like anyone can go out and download those modules and use it to make graphs for yourself. So like don't reinvent the wheel. Like if it's already pre-exists, don't just like something like I'm just gonna code a graph without using any like modules that other people made, but that's gonna be very difficult. So always use resources that are out there for your research project. Like when you think of doing something in your research project, take some time, do some research, how other people might approach your research project, see what resources they use, and then take that as like a learning experience that other people did, and then you can adapt them, like use them in your own research project to make like gathering data or doing stuff in your research project easier. Okay, so like with all research projects, results are very important, because if you just do a research project, do an experiment without gathering any data or like analyzing any results, then this way, unless it's like a passion project, which you just want to do for the fun of it, so the results are very important because it tells you like what the question you're analyzing, like what answer you can get from your data points. So once again, you can use computer science to make something that's seemingly very, very complicated into something that's very easy for anyone to do. So look at these very complicated equation on the side that looks very scary. Using computer science, you can make this very easy by using like pre-written code from other people and modules. So if you this symbol right here, it's called a sigma, which sounds complicated, but it's just like the sum of everything in here. So just sum up everything here. So instead of just like doing it and actually understanding what this equation means, you can just use on the programs, can code a program to get all of these data for you. So then you don't have to do it yourself. So computer science, right, will allow you to use pre-written code in your own program to make complicated equations less complicated. So if you just know if you get a number from this equation, if you just know what that number means, you won't really have to understand like every single portion of the equation. You could just plug that equation into your program and then wait for your program to spit out a number at you. And then you can say, oh, this number, I know what this number means, but I don't need to know what each part of the equation means. And if you don't have computer science, you have to sit there and then start like writing these by hand, grabbing a calculator and doing all of this by hand. And sometimes you will make mistakes if you have a large set of data points. So computer science is always very useful, like even not only for graphs, but for looking at your results. So here, I used computer science in my research project for the results by analyzing a one-way ANOVA test for significance. Okay, people, this may sound very confusing, but I just like putting all the data, the ages and masses of my stars into this equation. And then the numbers I got just tells me if that number, like all the data I got is like correlates or like matches my expectations, or like if it's actually significant, or like or all the data I got was just like a mistake, or due to like I just got lucky and picked some stars that gave that result, rather or not that it's actually significant. So you can use computer science to analyze your data, and then you can write a program that takes in the set of data and does a test of significance. So in the future, when you go to like middle school, high school, when you learn more about like doing research, you're gonna learn about something called test of significance, which what I use computer science for in my research and like for the results. So I went through a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions? It doesn't have to be related to what I said, or like any questions about like computer science or research or anything else. If not, then let's move on. So okay, let's go up to the question. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are interested in how can you get started with doing your own research project. So some ideas can start simple. Like you don't want like for your first research project, you just jump in to do something very complicated, like do artificial intelligence, even though like you don't really have a lot of idea about it. Or like do something else like, oh, I want to build a robot. Like every great scientist and scientific discovery, like gravity and all of that, had to start somewhere. So like a classic simple research project is something called like a plant experiments. But I'm sure like most of you know, like if you guys are in middle school, high school, like the pea plant, where you can see like, oh, this plant grow better with more sunlight or less sunlight. How much sunlight I put in the closet or I put it by the window. So like maybe those simple experiments that you like probably know what should happen. But if you can just do like those simple experiments just to get a feel of how like the scientific method works, like how you can go about a research project, then that's always a good start to actually doing a research project. But then say like you finish up those like simple research projects and you want to go about like doing something bigger, something more complicated, you have to start off with finding a passion. Like if you do a research project on something you're not interested in, then it'll start feeling less like a hobby or like something you're interested in, and to feeling more like homework or a chore that your teacher gives you. If you find something that you're passionate about or you're interested in about, then you'll be very excited to do that project. So there's like numerous fields of science one can do a project in. So you just have to find your passion. So like your passion can be like planets or stars, like the research project I did, or even maybe like about animals, like you want to focus on one specific animal. Say you're very interested on like cheetahs or something, and you want to learn about how like cheetahs grow from like a baby to an adult, can always do a research project about that. But like maybe like if animals on your thing and planets on your thing, can always do like expand upon your simple project of plants, and maybe you want to do a more complicated project on plants. Like say if you want to do a project that analyzes like DNA of plants, or maybe like the different species of plants and how they connect to each other or maybe to the environment. So like you can always build upon your interests and find a research project for that interest. Does anyone have any questions? If you want, you can also type in the chat like some ideas or some topics you're interested in, so you can see like what kind of research projects you guys can do in the future. Like anything you can be interested in, like food, because a lot of people do like research projects that analyze like the ingredients that go into food and if they're healthy or not. Like any topics. Don't be shy, you can just like type in anything. Like people even do research projects on games and how like maybe like you know those like idea that maybe like violent games can and inspire violence in real life. They did a whole project like research experiment on that, and they found out that it doesn't really inspire violence. So you can always do like research projects on like games and their effects on humans, even like projects on video on anything. Electricity. Yeah, so like you know those like the experiment that Benjamin Franklin did with flying a kite in like a storm. So those are like projects on electricity or something like that. And they also have like projects using circuits and how you can light up a light bulb. But those are like maybe like some simple projects you can start off if you want to do like a very complicated project on electricity. So like make a light bulb, like a circuit, and just add some batteries and wires and just light up a light bulb, something like that. So yeah, so you can see that there's a lot of different topics out there. So if you start working on a project and you think you're interested in that topic, and then you find out later on, like, oh, this topic is kind of boring, I don't want to do this research project anymore, you can always stop and then find another passion, another topic you're interested in, and then you can go about making a research project on that. Okay, so let's move on. So what happens when you find an idea? How can you get started with actually making that idea into a project, or into reality, and when you can focus on it? So here is a general timeline. So don't think of it as a fixed timeline, but like it can be something you can do. So first you pick a topic. So say we're interested in electricity, well, exit. And then after that, you have to gather resources that you will need to create that research project. So that can be from either a mentor, which I talked about before. So a mentor can be someone or like a scientist that experience in that field, or they had prior like experiences with conducting a research project in a topic. So in my case, I got a mentor that was a professor at college that did a lot of research around stars, and I asked him to help like mentor me on my own research project. Like your mentor can like be a teacher, can be one of your parents that have some experience with that topic. It can also be about say like a professor from a college, or like a accomplished scientist that you can always ask if they are willing to help mentor you on your own research project. Say you don't have a mentor, you can always gather more information through Google. So like Google has a lot of, if you just search typing electricity, or like typing animals, you have pages and pages and pages of information. So always use Google to start off, like brainstorm ideas, like brainstorm like resources that you will need to make your research project. And make sure that the sources and information you have on Google is actually relevant and not like misinformation. Because sometimes you know how like if you go on Wikipedia, I'm pretty sure a lot of teachers like Wikipedia isn't a good source because people could just edit it. So to make sure that the source you pick is a correct source, and you can always go on Google Scholar and read those articles, or you can just go on those like other .edu or like .gov websites where they're more credible than say like Wikipedia. And a trick you can use is say you can only find information on Wikipedia. You can always scroll down to the bottom where there's a tab called sources, where it shows you where each information on that Wikipedia page came from, and you can use those sources for your research project. And then you don't have to do your research project alone. You can always have partners, like do a research project with a group, or do a research project with your best friend. And you can always just do it that way, so you don't have to like learn everything by yourself. And then check your school, because maybe your school has resources like this, that one teacher that's your favorite teacher and knows a lot about your topic. You can always ask him or her for help. Or you can, maybe your school has a research program, or maybe like a science class that relates to your research project. You can always use that to help gather resources for your project. And then finally, you have to go do that project. Don't just gather resources and be like, and get scared, because it might be like everything is so confusing, everything doesn't make sense. Don't get scared and decide not to do your project. Everyone who first start doing a research project gets intimidated and scared from all the information, all the complicated words and complicated procedures and very complicated equations. To start simple, or ask for help to make things like more understandable, and then start your research project. If you make mistakes at first, it's fine. You can always restart or just continue on and jot down that mistake, so then you won't do those same mistakes in the future. And then finally, once you finish your research project, report your results. Like tell your family, tell your friends, tell your teachers, tell your mentor, and tell your school or whoever you want about what you just did and what results you got from it. Maybe the results are very significant and you just discovered something very cool and you want to tell everyone. You can always like just tell your mentor, or maybe even like enter competitions to report your results. Maybe write a paper. Like some people even write papers in high school. You don't have to wait to college to do like a very complicated research project. Just report your results, no matter how small the results are, to somebody, so then people will know that you did that research project. And once again, let me reiterate, always don't be afraid to ask for help. If your research project is very complicated, find a mentor. That mentor could be a parent, that mentor could be a teacher, that mentor could be an accomplished scientist. So if you were to like go online and read some papers, maybe like find that person, a scientist that you see like the projects they do are very interested, you can always send them an email and ask, oh, I am, like say me, like I am Rachel, I am interested in your projects on stars. Will you be willing to mentor me? Like, don't be afraid to do that. Sometimes you get no response. Like a lot of people I know, they send a bunch of men, send like 50 emails to people and get no response. I mean, maybe like you get lucky and get a response. Like, don't be afraid. You can always just like try. And you can always ask your teachers themselves for help. And then finally, once again, for data, instead of inventing the wheel, there are numerous resources that are pre-made online. So if your research project involves computer science, remember that there are a lot of pre-written modules that you can use to create graphs. Don't be like just sitting there with a blank file and being like, how do I create a graph out of nothing? You can always Google it and see what other people did, and then adopt that or adapt that to your own research project. And then you don't have to work in group, you don't have to work alone, work in a group or find a partner with your research project. And then after you're done with everything, share your findings. So do you want to submit that project to a competition? Do you want to tell your friends? Do you want to tell your family? Do you want to submit that project as a grade for your school? Just tell someone what you did. Don't keep it to yourself, because then you want to see, like, other people can give you their feedback of what you did, and then you can build upon that feedback to make so then the next research project you did will be better than the one you did before. And make sure to plan your project out. Some projects can last months, maybe even years. So it'll be good if at the start you just write a brief outline of like all the tasks you need to do and how long does each task take. Don't don't be concerned if your project does not follow your plan like exactly. It's fine if some things take longer than others, but just like have a general draft of how you want your project schedule to be. So you'll know like all of the steps you need to take, all the tasks you need to do, and like how long you think the project will take. So that maybe something like this, where like phase one is where you do all the research, gather all the information, and if you're doing lab research, like when we find a lab, and if you're doing like a research that involves a lot of chemicals, maybe one of the tasks you can do is find a way to gather those chemicals, like either through buying them online, or if they're very dangerous chemicals, ask your teacher. Like if there's any like resources, any labs you need to find, like to go to get those chemicals. And they had to learn about the safety precautions and how to handle those chemicals. So that can be like a phase one with a bunch of tasks. And the phase two could be like doing that experiment, gathering the data, the results, and analyzing stuff like that. And you could put in how long you think each step will take. Like some steps might take a week or maybe even a day, but other steps can take months or even years to complete because of how maybe how complicated each step can be. So a plan is always a good idea because you want to see like have a general timeline, or even like general lists of all the tasks you need to do in your research project. Then again, after you're done, share your findings with your friends and family. Maybe enter in a competition, like a school science fair. There's like fairs that you have in middle school and in high school. And if you want to go even bigger, you can submit it to like regional and national competitions like JSHS, ISEF, and regional STS. Like these are just like big names of big competitions that you might want to try your hand in. And then finally, the most important idea that you can get from my presentation is just go do your project. Don't be scared. Don't just like start researching and then suddenly start and be like, I can't do it. No, you can do it. And even if it seems complicated, look for help, do your own research, and then actually take the steps to begin your research project. And your first research project might be very simple, or you might make a lot of mistakes in it. Just learn from those mistakes and then use it to help do your next research project. And finally, thanks. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah, you can just unmute yourself or type in the chat. Yeah, also like doing computer science, like having computer science in your research project, you might want to first start learning computer science. Like a lot of research projects involve Python because Python is easier to use for data science. And you can always take Python classes to start like learning about like the basics of Python and how you can incorporate that in your research project.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. I think we get some of our questions from the registration form. Yeah, so one of the parents asked, when do you think the kids get started doing the research is the good year or good grade? And what should they do by using the computer science such as Python you mentioned?
So I think a good idea about using Python in research is to actually learn Python before you do a research project. So you can start learning Python at any age, like even at elementary school. But mainly revolves about research. You can start doing research in middle school, maybe even in elementary school, because some schools gives you projects to do, like those like school required projects. Or you can do science fairs in middle school. I'm not sure they have science fairs in elementary school, but like your school sponsors science fairs, you can use that as a first step to actually do research. But it's mainly in high school where research becomes more complicated and it involves more like, let's say like artificial intelligence or like more complicated topics. So use middle school to actually start getting a feel of how to do research. And then once you're in high school, you can like find those resources, find mentors to do more complicated research topics.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So one of the parents are really want to know, is there any research program helped for apply the university, such as you've been to MIT, so I guess some of high school students, they really want to know what kind of research are really help them to go to the university.
Hey, I know there are some very competitive research programs like RSI, and like a lot of those psychologists offer research programs themselves for high school students. But for me, I just did research through my school's research program and also through MIT's BeaverWorks program. But you don't have to do research through a program, because some of my friends just did research themselves by seeking out a mentor, like emailing a bunch of different scientists, asking if they are willing to mentor them. So your research program doesn't really matter. Your research project itself matters more than what program you go to. Like just do a project that you're interested in, see it through, finish it, go all the way to the end, that project. And if that project is good, send it to competitions. You don't have to win competitions. Not a lot of high school students does research. So just doing research itself looks very good for colleges.
All right. Yeah, one of the parents said his son is right now in 6th grade. And is it too early for him to learn Python and towards the research?
In 6th grade, I don't think it's too early to learn Python. But if he doesn't have any prior experience with coding, then he can start off with like taking Scratch classes maybe. Well, I think it's fine for him to learn Python in 6th grade, but like doing research in 6th grade, maybe he should start off with doing those like simpler research projects, which I talked about, maybe like the P-plan research, or like just doing some research projects with like resources that you have at home. Like don't give them like very dangerous chemicals yet. Like something that an adult can supervise, so then you can see like the child actually go through a process of learning how to do research. And maybe when they're like in 8th grade or like in high school in 9th grade, then they can graduate to doing more complicated ones that might involve chemicals or like more complicated computer science programs.
All right, so one of the parents asked us, so what kind of language programming is suitable for learn to do the scientific research in the future?
So a lot of scientists use Python because Python is very easy to understand and learn because they use a lot of English, like the regular English language in Python. And Python is very useful for data science, which we have in our classes, like a whole unit on data science. So data science is basically where we analyze a bunch of data and try to find a pattern. We try to get results out of that. So Python, like using Python for data science is very beneficial. So like most scientists use Python.
All right, thank you. So yeah, it's pretty much all from the registration form, the questions, and we'll see, is there any other question from the Zoom or from Clubhouse? So anyone, if you have any questions, just open your mic or you type on the chat, and then Rachel's gonna answer your questions. And if you have the question related how to involve our Python club or register our Python classes at Bay Coding Club, you also can contact with our Bay Coding Club, me or Ping or Tina. And you also can log on our website to check more information.
Yeah, your questions also don't have to be related to research. It can be about anything.
Yes, sure. All right, I noticed there's some of registration form set the kids are really earlier on their year, and they had some experience about Python. So I think more and more the kids are getting involved in research are towards to the university. Maybe they should, do a lot of planning. So I believe, Rachel, since you have success enrolled into MIT, so I believe you have a lot of planning about yourself, maybe at elementary school, middle school, high school. So can you briefly give the students here some of a big rough ideas how to plan their research road or roadmap or pathways through even middle school to high school?
So if you want to do research, like if you already know that you want to do research in high school, you can start off in middle school by thinking about what passion you have. Because I know in middle school, I was always fascinated with stars and planets. So I know I want to learn more about that. And you can also just like start actually learning more simpler. Like if you don't have any prior programming experience, I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys do. So you can just like start learning more about that coding, like coding and more about programming. If your research project involves more about like simulations rather than lab research. So just find your passion in middle school, find what you're interested in, and then start learning more about that topic. And once you reach high school, you can actually put that interest, like actually do something about that interest, either by joining clubs in your high school that focuses around that interest, or like actually like starting to work on that research project. So it's because you tend to be able to get those resources that you need to do that research project in high school, and then actually do your research project. So start off with an idea, your passion, and then get the resources. And then once you reach high school, actually do that project.
All right, thank you, Rachel. I think it's pretty much all for the information or our questions from the students. The last minute comments, if you still have questions, just open your mic, and from Clubhouse or from Zoom. All right, if you don't have any questions about whatever you have, either the research in computer science or other questions from you, apply the future high school or programs or research programs, or find a mentor, or apply the university. If you have any question, you can ask Rachel, since Rachel has already passed all the application, tasks, right? Okay, or you can shoot email in the future at info@baycodingclub.com to find Rachel. All right, I think pretty much all. If you guys don't have questions, it's pretty much all for today. And find us at baycodingclub.com or send email at info@baycodingclub.com. And Rachel teach Python and Java and some other course at Baycoding Club. Okay, I think pretty much all for today. Rachel, do you have any other comments for the last takeaways?
Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you all for coming. If you have any questions like what Ruby said, you can always send us an email and I'll get back to you guys.
All right, thank you all for today's webinar.